Hey there. I'd like to talk a little bit about the rail system that I bought for this case build and the power supply. So I got my power supply from Trogotronic out of Monterey, California, and I worked with a guy by the name of WT. And the rail system I bought from Centrotech out of Seattle, Washington, and I worked with Jeff, and yeah, I'm really happy with what I've bought so far. I did a lot of research and I just found that, both of these companies had reliable reviews, and I'll talk a little bit later about my experience with each company because they did differ a little bit. The only tools that you're going to need to build your rail system are basically a Phillips head screwdriver and a towel or some sort of working surface so that you don't scratch your table, unless it's a workbench that you don't mind scratching on. But I'd still recommend working on a padded surface. So the rail systems are really great. I ended up buying, my total width is 168 HP. So the rails I bought were 168 HP. And then I bought 7 3U 168 HP rail systems. That comes with the bracket to put it together. And it comes with the threaded nut strips that I bought. You could save a little bit of money per rail and just buy the screws with the sliding nuts, but I don't like that. I'm used to the IntelliHell system, and I really like the threaded nut strips because it just makes it so much easier. You don't have to the nuts slide around, then you can't find it and you can't get it screwed into the place properly. So that's what I prefer. Like I said, they come with the rails as you see here, and we're going to build one and I'll show you, and it comes with the threaded nut strips inside of it. Jeff ships everything with all the screws that you need. So you're going to get enough wood screws, or they'll screw into, I think, plastic or anything like that. And then you'll get the screws for screwing in. It's self-threading, and you'll get the screws for threading into the rail system. And yeah, this is what they look like finished. This is the 1U that I built, so it comes with its own little brackets. I might also mention that the brackets you can buy through Centrotech are either the kind that are inside the case and they mount inside, and they're, you won't see anything on the outside, whereas you can also buy the L brackets that sort of sit on the outside and screw down from the outside. But I wanted it to look really clean and flush, so that's what I went with. And yeah, you can also alternatively use a power drill. I went ahead and built these with a by hand, but you could use a power drill. My only recommendation would be make sure you have it set for ratcheting so that it won't like torque too hard, because when you get to the end, when you're screwing it in with that, it might jerk in your hand, like yank out of your hand. And these are kind of sharp. You could cut yourself. They're machined pretty sharp. So yeah. Alternatively, you could just screw them in most of the way and then finish by hand. So yeah, like as I mentioned, it's really just a Phillips head screwdriver and then a padded surface if you're not working on a workbench. Definitely have your coffee to keep you motivated. And then we're going to open up the Trogotronic power supply together, and we're going to look on the inside and see what WT shipped me. So yeah, let's get started. So as I mentioned, the screws are self-threading, so it could take a second to get started. So you're going to get it in there and just start screwing it in. There we go. They're, like I said, self-threading. They go into the bottom hole opposite the rails. And I did all these by hand, as you see here. And it takes a little bit of pressure and a little bit of time. You could alternatively use a electric screwdriver, but like I said, make sure that you stop before the end, because you don't want this to jerk out of your hand or strip or something. So see, I stopped before it was done, and then I just go ahead and finish it by hand. Now, as I mentioned, the flat side is the outside. The side with the, hole or rail hole is on the inside. So then the next one is going to mount flat side out, like this, like that. So now, these rails, threaded nut strips will slide out of the rails. All right, so there's the rail system complete. And when your rails are all complete, the way they fit together is like such. And you'll see that the modules will cover up the complete rail system. So when you have another module installed like this and the rails are butted up against each other, I hope you can see this, you're not gonna see any of the rail system at all. So it should be flush. So for your measuring purposes, you know that there is no, some of the rail systems I saw had a little bit of lip on top, and then, when you install modules, you're gonna have a little bit of silver showing. I don't know if you want that. Ideally, you could paint these black. I talked to Jeff about it. He said some people do, they just spray paint them black. I'm not gonna do that just because I don't want to, because they're gonna be completely invisible when I have all the modules installed. But yeah, there you go. That's the rail system built. All right, let's open the power supply. As I mentioned, I went with Trogotronic through Monterey, California, and it came pretty rapidly, so that was good. The Synthrotech parts came really fast as well. All right, so power supply comes, and you get all the parts you need for mounting the hardware. I ended up not going with the DIY kit. It looks like there is going to be some DIY here. You get patch, you get a warranty service card, sticker, and the instructions. Yep, the instructions for putting it together. It's going to come with the power bricks that you need. I ended up buying the M15 12U power system times 2, so I bought 2 of them because I have enough HP and power requirements that I'm going to need it. Here's the power bricks that will be mounting inside the case, so the only thing that will be visible on the outside of the case should be the switch. So this will go on the back of my case. So as I said, I bought the M15 12U and I bought 2 of them. So basically like half of my modules will be powered with one power supply and the other half with the other. These go to the power bricks. Again, this is all mounted on the inside, so all you should see is the switch on the outside. Then you have the power plug that goes to your wall outlet, and you have, so again, I didn't buy the DIY kit, I bought the pre-built power boards. There's 15 sockets on each board, and yeah, it looks like I'm gonna need to do a little bit of wiring to get the power together. I didn't realize that. And what else? That's everything pretty much. I will mention that you can go on Modular Grid and you can put in all the modules and plan your build, and it will tell you the power specifications that you need. It will give you the minus 12 volts, the plus 12 volts requirements, and the positive 5 volt requirements for your system. Then you can go on Trogotronic's website and you can read about each individual system and what the power requirements are. It's going to break down what you need for the plus 12 and minus 12 combined, the plus 12 and the minus 12 and the plus 5 combined, and then individual rows can only handle so much of each power amperage requirements. What you want to understand is that the plus and minus 12 volts are additive. You have to add those together for your power requirements. So each system that you buy is going to have a rating. This one, the 12U M15, is rated to 20,000 milliamps. And so what I did is I went on Modular Grid and I put in every module that I have and every module that I'm going to potentially have, and I looked at the power requirements. I made sure that it was well under half of what this power supply can handle. The reason being because you're going to have your operating amperage, but you're also going to have your power up amperage. So when you fire up your modules at first, they draw a lot more current initially before they get to their operating current. So you want to make sure that you have enough headroom in your power board to not fry your power board. Each of these switches can only handle so much current, just as each of these boards can only handle so much current. So my best advice to you is to figure out your power requirements on modular grid. Put in some eccentric modules or whatever you can think of that you might possibly buy someday, just to make sure that you give yourself enough headroom. Look at Trogotronic's website and each power supply and what they, what their power specifications are. Understand that the plus and minus 12 volts are synchronous, so that it's going to be added together. So if you have a power system rated to 20,000 milliamps, you want to make sure that every module being plugged into it has enough headroom so that when you power it on initially, it's going to draw more current than its operating current. So you want to make sure you don't spike and blow your power system, or maybe start a fire or something like that. All right, so there we go. That's the power system. And next we're going to start planning out the case. And yeah, let's get to that. Okay, just a quick little video to show what I'm doing. This is how I'm planning out the actual sides for the piece. I'm going to trace out the placement of the racks, and then I'm going to, I'm measuring out some straight 90-degree angles. And I'm figuring out the distance. The deepest part will be these guys. So I want to make sure that my deepest module, which is it's not Trigger Riot, it's the Z8000 by Tip Top Audio. Fantastic module, but the older version is a very deep module. I think it's like 59 or 54 millimeters. So I want to make sure that my power boards, when mounted, obviously there's going to be enough room for the ribbon cable to reach the power board, but also for deep modules to fit in there. And same goes for over here. I'm going to want to make sure that where the back is, the modules are far enough away where they don't bump into it, but the ribbons can reach, because some ribbons come really, really short. So yeah, I'm probably going to be about that far away, which means that the rear is going to be about right here, maybe a little bit less. So yeah, I'm planning for the top to be a little angled, so when I'm sitting down I can see, but when I'm standing I can still also see. But I want the top row to be slightly angled, so I also have my other deepest module, which is the ADAC quad quantizer. And that's a like 52 millimeter depth. So you want to make sure that when the top comes across here, the module's not going to bump into it and has room to adequately fit. So really the only main measurement areas you need are, if you're going to angle the top or bottom, you want to make sure that the module, when seated, isn't going to bump across your ceiling here, your little top. And you want to make sure that your depth is right so that the ribbon cables can meet, as well as they don't run into each other, especially with these super deep modules. So I'm going to need to measure the size of this, because these power bricks are going to be along the rows. So you want to make sure that, like I said, the modules can not bump into them. And you want a little bit of room for ventilation as well. So yeah, this is so far what I've got. Hopefully this isn't too confusing to look at, but yeah, you can see how I'm planning it. And I put some modules in there to make sure that they're not, bumping into each other, or that there's no problems. Plan on having no gap, but you can see at certain angles you have a little bit of a closeness, but I think that's because there we go. So yeah, you want to make sure, see how these nuts are getting really close to each other. It could be hard to mount and remove modules, especially if you place modules together that have jacks on top and then the other one has on bottom, and they might start bumping into each other. So you want to be a little careful about these angles. I used Gorilla Tape to stick them place the, because they just fall over if you stand them up like this. So I placed them and I stuck them together. I placed some tape on the bottom as well, and then I did the next row, stuck it together, placed the tape on the bottom, and just moved my way along until I got the whole thing on there. And just evaluating to make sure that this is the shape that I want. And yeah, it's like 35 inches tall, which is what I planned on, and it's gonna be great. So what we're doing here is we're gonna glue 2 pieces of oak together, because as you can see I have my template cut out. So what I have to do is I have to glue on a board right here, and I have to glue it so that it fits and make sure that we can glue everything together. So this is just to demonstrate that the wood glue is strong enough to not even require dowels or anything. And it broke not even at the joint of the wood glue. So the wood glue is stronger than the actual wood. So I got this, these pieces all glued and married together, and with the tight bond wood glue it should be strong enough to hold. I'm using weights over here because the table is a little bit imperfect, and so I want to make sure that that joint stays together. This one looks really good, this joint, it's even. This one you can see how the table's slightly lifting the end there, so I'm just pushing that down so that when it bonds together, it'll be an even joint. But yeah, should be good, and then we can cut out the shape. Alright, so I got the pieces all glued. I got my template, as you can see, and I've left enough room so that my bare minimum line for reach, as you can see, I measured to here, with my deepest module comes to here, and then my power brick, if I were to put them right next to each other, comes to here. So I had just minimum clearance at this black line, and then I gave myself an extra, half an inch. And then with this wood, we're going to leave another eighth or half inch in the back, because that's where, when I install the plywood back, it's gonna be about that thick, maybe half an inch, because that'll be recessed into here. So the power bricks and everything are gonna go on there. So I've given myself plenty of room, and what I'm gonna do is I'm going to get the sandpaper to finish sanding these, so all the blemishes come out, and then we're going to cut them on the bandsaw. Okay, so what I did to screw it together was I just had to screw it down on one side, and then I had to flip it and hold this side up top and then just eyeball it and screw it in. So I may or may not cut out and make these a little bit more curvy, but now I've just got to get some modules in here and see how they fit, because I've got some areas that are not exactly perfect, like right here. I don't like that. I don't like that. So the planer will actually take quite a bit of this down. I've already, as you can see, taken quite a bit off. So a mistake I made is you gotta level your thing, and you can see how I have a valley right here and right here. That comes from sanding, focusing on one area too much, and now I've created a valley. And unfortunately, this is higher than this, and this is higher than this, so I'm going to take some off of the center to try to correct it. As you can see, I got daylight on both sides. Real bad over here. Real bad. So what I've done is I've measured where all the power boards are going to go, and I've got 4.5 inches from the side on either side, which gives 3.5 inches between them. I checked to make sure there's plenty of room for the ribbon cable. Let's make sure I can show you this. I checked to make sure there's plenty of room from any position. And now what I'm doing is I'm marking where these go. Okay, so I've measured out the switch, where the switches are going to go. I've given myself enough room on the inside so that the power bricks, if need be, can lie underneath the switch. And also the switch is far enough away from if there was a circuit board here, but there's not. But anyway, they come with this little template, and the way I measured it was I accounted for the 1/2 inch thickness of the plywood, and then the 13/16 thickness of this oak, and then I found my measurement on the inside, and then I've measured it out here on the back, and then I'm just going to use the this awl here to mark. Just trying to get this lined up straight so I don't have a crooked switch. And what I'm going to do is I could use an X-Acto knife and cut out also doing is I'm going to mark the corners here of where I'm going to jigsaw out. Okay, this is how you drill the holes. We've already drilled them on the other side. Now we're finishing by drilling on this side to drill it out. So you go halfway on one side, and my dad showed me how to mark the tape here so that you don't go too far. You drill the other side here. So what I got here is the bottom piece, and I've pre-drilled all my holes for the power boards, and then I painted it with chalk paint, Miss Lillian's no wax chalk paint. The first thing I did was I sanded it with my random orbital sander, and I sanded both sides, and I got it, wiped off and really smooth. And I sanded the inside of these holes and kind of beveled the edge a little bit. When I beveled the edge, I just wrapped a piece of sandpaper and went like this, and then beveled the edge all the way around so I don't have like a sharp edge. And then I got the other side done as well. And then after I chalk painted it once, I did a second sanding, real fine sanding, and got it back down to not the wood, but almost to the wood. And then I chalk painted it again, so it's got two coats on there. And it's just use like a multi-brush, and you just spread it on. And then I use a little spray bottle. So you pour the chalk paint in here, and you can spray on your brush. Spray a little in here, keep it kind of not wet but a little wet, and it'll spread much easier. Too much water will thin it out too much, but you just eventually wet this a little bit, just wet this a little bit, and and just do it in small bits, and get the whole thing covered, let it dry. And I just gave it 24 hours to dry before I sanded it, and then I did it again. And so now I have a nice backboard that when the modules are out, you're going to see nothing but a flat black. So it makes it look a little bit better. I've done some test strips. I got two different. This one's called Early American, and this one's called Red Oak. And Red Oak is right here, and Early American is here. And so I'm still not sure which one I want to do. I kind of like slightly darker, but what I don't like is how it made the grain really black. It's kind of ugly, whereas this looks a little bit nicer, but I kind of like the darker brown here. Okay, so I've sanded it down all the way down to 600 grit, made it really hard and smooth, and then I took a damp cloth and wiped it all off so that now some of the water absorbed into the wood and it swelled up in the grain, and so you can feel it's rough again in a few areas. So now I'm going to sand it back down to a really smooth. I've also filled some cracks with some wood filler, and now I'm going to sand that down, and then when that's all finished, it's going to be really smooth again and ready for stain. When we sand, we're going to use our hearing protection, and yeah, let's do it. while you're feeling it with your hand and it's nice and smooth again. And I've gotten rid of all that wood filler, and now it's filled the cracks perfectly where there was like a slight crack. It's really smooth. And then finally we'll go to a 600. We'll get a 600 on there, and one final, we'll do this all over the whole thing, and then one final time we'll take some water I'm almost out of water, and slightly damp cloth, and we'll make sure that when we wipe it that it doesn't get rough again, that it stays nice and smooth. Now that I have the stain on everything, you take a clean rag and you just kind of even it all out. Make sure there's no spots that are darker than others. Made a game time decision, and I figured that the last stain was too red and light, and so I went with the other stain that I bought, which was called red oak. And I stacked it on top of it, and I just applied it all. Now I have to wipe it, and yeah, it looks good. It's more of a rich, darker color that I wanted, and it got rid of some of the red, so I'm pretty stoked. So now we're going to apply this tung oil finish now that we've got this stained, and then the instructions say you apply it liberally and with a rag, and then you let it stand for 5 to 15 minutes. You buff it off evenly, and then you let it dry for 24 hours before applying the second coat. And then that should finish this thing off. So this is the wiring schematic for the Trogotronic M15S. As you can see here, I've already wired up, boarded these, and then wired these up according to the schematic. This is going to have more connectors to it, but I'll do that in just a minute. So the way I did this is I pre-drilled some holes. Kind of tedious. now that we've got everything wired up and tightened down all the screws, we're going to place the power board on here. And it comes with some shorter screws and some longer ones. So it looks like these simply, you're going to need an Allen wrench for this. Okay, so I've got the switches put in here, and then the way I'm going to wire this is I've decided to have 2 sets of the breakout boxes, or the little power bricks right here, and I've already Velcroed these down. Trogotronic sends you a strip of Velcro of the hook and the loop, and then you cut each strip into 4 sections evenly, and that way the loop section, which is the kind of fuzzy soft section, will go on the power bricks on the bottom here, and then the loop section will go actually on the board. So I've already got these on there, as you can see, like that. And that just goes on there. And then I've ran these underneath all here, and then I'm going to secure these down with fasteners. But one thing I wanted to point out in this video is that I had previously put all the screws, I thought I just didn't read clearly, so make sure you always read your instructions, but I put 3 screws per side. And then I realized that when I was looking at the instructions, and this was quite flimsy in the middle here, that it needs 2 screws here and here. And then as per the instructions, it kind of bites when you turn these into the circuit board a little bit, but it says that's fine. And then I kind of brace it down, so I'm driving in these new holes in the wood here, so that one's secured. So now these move a little bit underneath there, and it's really firm. So now when I press in some stuff, it's not gonna bend the board, which could give you some cold solder connections, could break some solder connections. So the mistake I made, like I said, was putting 3 of the screws and spacers on each side, whereas it's 2 and then 1 in the middle here. The other thing I wanted to talk about, the last thing, is with these self-starting screws, by screwing them in and unscrewing them, screwing them and unscrewing them, I ended up with a screw that was stripped, so it would just spin and it wouldn't actually dig into the wood. So what I did is I just took 2 pieces of toothpick, broke them off, and instead of the very pointy end, I just broke off part of the pointy end, so it kind of looks like, simulates a screw head, and I broke it off about yay big, two sections, and I put it in there in the hole, shoved it down there with the other toothpick so it was stuck in the hole, and then when I screwed the screw back in, it locks itself in tight, and so it isn't stripped anymore. It's a little dark, but let's see if it powers up.